Super Smash Bros. Ultimate has a lot of characters. And with a lot of characters comes a lot of matchups. That's nothing new to us, especially as we come close to the game's 6th year after release. When we navigate through the core of all these different matchups, there can be a lot to understand. For instance, let's take a look at Dr. Mario's dash attack. A pretty straightforward move. A quick glance at ultimate frame data shows that it's -12 on shield. But when you start to look a little bit closer, the late hit can be as safe as +2? Seriously? Why does he have that? Information like this can dramatically change how you want to punish this move. A greedy out of shield punish might get caught because you mistook the move's safety at a distance. These little tidbits of info can make or break tournament sets. And if you want to get first place, it is vital to know how to avoid tournament ending checks like these. Today, I wanted to shed some light onto something that I don't think many of us consider too deeply. The term that I think best describes this topic is what I like to call matchup refresh rate. A matchup refresh rate is essentially how quickly you can remember how to fight certain characters in a short period of time, like a tournament set. In a best of 3 or best of 5 setting, you only get so many stocks and games to quickly remember how to fight a certain character. And when you're jumping from setup to setup at a tournament with little downtime and plenty of nerves in your body, it can be downright terrifying to go into a set without a clear mind or game plan. Going down a game or two and being forced to make the comeback is not a position that's ideal for your tournament experience. So let's push the envelope here a little bit more. I want to differentiate matchup refresh rate from raw adaptation. See, matchup refresh rate is much more focused on the character that you are fighting, rather than the player. When you play someone for the first time, you on a stage as stacked as Genesis, Kagadibi, or Supernova, you really only get to know the character that you're up against in most rule sets. You might have seen a VOD of the opponent play in the past, especially if they're an active local player and VODs are readily available. But aside from that, it's up to you to adapt on the fly and use your knowledge of the game as best as you can. As you climb the rankings to become a top level threat to any opponent, the adaptation speed becomes much quicker. What may have taken a game to adapt to may only take a stock, or maybe just one interaction. Smash is a game of adaptation and understanding of its engine, and limiting confusion of your opponent's character is just one facet in determining the outcome of a game. This is what I think matchup refresh rate is the most important for. In Smash, a player uses their character as a vehicle. It is through the limitations and strengths of a character that a player is able to execute their game plan. Matchup refresh rate involves understanding these character-specific qualities that relate to the opponent's habits. An easy example that I use at the start of this video is the safety on shield of Dr. Mario's dash attack. Let's try a different situation. Let's say you're a Ryu player like myself, and you know that Rob's forward air is -6. As a Ryu player looking to punish this move, your out of shield punish would be up B, since that move is also frame 6 and Ryu's fastest out of shield option. But because you notice that your opponent lands their aerial on your shield much higher than just before hitting the ground, you react and use a harder hitting punish, like neutral air, which comes out on frame 7, or a shield grab, which comes out on frame 10 to get a platform tech chase off a throw. You use the game's positioning and your understanding of frame data to pick a calculated reward which best fit the situation. What if Rob spaces his forward air outside of Ryu's range? Then Ryu doesn't have any direct punishes, and he has to think a little bit more abstractly. Let's say Ryu decides to reposition to a platform, or maybe he holds his shield and tries to react to what Rob wants next. These are layers that both players have more control over which interactions they want to play out. However, you already have a game plan for that layer 1 forward air on shield. Now, you can focus entirely on how the player uses that same tool that you are now ready to fight against. In order to get to fighting the player, you have to fight the opponent's basic toolkit first. If you cannot beat the character's tools, then there is no adaptive thinking that can take place to fight the player. The Rob will push that forward air on shield if you don't have a game plan against it, spaced or not. Matchup refresh rate is almost a barrier of sorts to actually playing the game versus the opponent, and this is how people get matchup checked. You see, matchups don't have to be just the moves you have to worry about. What about the range that an opponent likes to play at? My favorite example for this topic is Young Link. If Young Link is far away from you, you can expect a lot of projectiles. Uncharged fire arrow, angled up boomerang, and bomb pull. If Young Link is up close, you can expect a lot of forward air, back air, neutral air, down tilt, and grab. The options that they pick in accordance with their position on the stage is very crucial. You're going to have to consider game plans for what will be very different at each individual range. And considering how different everybody's stats are, it can be very difficult in such a short notice. Speaking of those stats, let's talk about how they have an impact on the mid-range's most important concept, the burst range. The burst range is the range in the game where both players are positioned and some of their tools become unreactable. The benchmark is usually 15 or so frames, but with the game's input delay, most options aren't truly reactable until about 20 to 22 frames on screen. Due to the nature of these unreactable options, players are going to position themselves preemptively to avoid these moves. Options such as Bayonetta's Afterburner Kick come to mind, which can provoke preemptive shields, crouches, or projectiles to punish Bayonetta before she comes flying straight for you with the death combo. You might know that Bayonetta wants that Afterburner Kick, but if you don't position yourself properly, you're one dash up away from being put into the danger zone, and you might not even know it. Having absolute control over your character is a key component in perfecting this part of matchup refresh rate. One of the last things you want to do in a tournament is give your opponent free reign over the neutral game. After all, neutral is just one stage of the game away from advantage state. And in 2024, where punish games have only gotten better and better, you do not want to be on the receiving end of that. Now, in my experience, not all matchups require the same effort to refresh. Some characters with a very strong layer 1 that don't really mix up their game plans will be easier to adapt to from the start. I like to think of characters like Game & Watch and Kazuya in this context, because you know they want to make the most of their damage with the strong moves in advantage that they have. You know exactly what they want to look for in neutral. Any other odd change will be easier to adapt to, since it won't punish you as hard, for the most part. On the other hand, characters with a lot of versatility are much harder to play versus. Think of ZSS. Between her ranged Zair, quick fair, and strong pokes on the ground, it is very hard to catch her. Thankfully, her damage output is a little lower than most other characters in this metagame, giving you a lot of interactions to learn and adapt to how the player wants to play their character. The last part of matchup refresh rate that I really want to highlight in this video is those unorthodox options. Sometimes players pick really stupid options, and you might not be ready for them.
El miedo es muy malo en estas situaciones. Estoy viendo.
Kratos está aprovechando muy bien de la desventaja de Riddle.
Claro, es que Kratos lo sabe. ¡Kratos lo sabe!
Because how you prepared for a matchup beforehand might not have had this option in your mental stack. Players play differently, and that's part of the game. Some players might prefer to play more grounded, others more aerial, and then you mix in offense and defense, and it almost feels impossible to be ready for everything. And part of that is because it is. The characters in this game, with so many options, are capable of otherworldly things. Especially top tiers. Look at how variable players like Steve, Sonic, and Snake play, and you can just see how much potential there is for characters that offer such various depth in their playstyles. Sometimes, you're going to get hit with some cheese. Some wacko options should not have hit you. And that's okay, because all the players play different. And the best thing that you can do in advance is to practice the matchup as best you can, to see all the options that are available to a given character at any time. Then, as you fight players, you start to see which options are the most consistent at the right time. Sonix is a player that I point to as my example here. The dude is able to grind and compete at such a high level doing what he loves, and a big reward of that grind is how hard it is to catch him off guard with something. What might have gone unpunished beforehand won't go punished another time once the interaction has been played out before. After all, it's always safer to play defensive in a situation you're uncertain in than to play aggressive and get reversal to lose. No, I lost! Like anything with Smash, practice is going to be your best friend. But what kind of practice helps the most with matchup refresh rate? Well, there's a lot of answers here. I find that long grind sessions help a lot with understanding a character's toolkit and their options. Having a practice partner that plays a character you don't get to play too often would be very beneficial to building confidence to play in those interactions. If you play, 35 sets with a player, you're going to be able to pull information from that matchup much quicker than others because of your honed expertise. However, you don't want to fall into the habit of only doing long grind sessions. In order to build stamina in other matchups on the fly, doing shorter 1st to 5 sessions requires you to be much quicker on your toes, because you don't get that long session to adapt and understand the player fully. These shorter sessions, in conjunction with longer sections, helps to build your awareness in preparing for matchups the same way a tournament would. Obviously, VOD reviewing your own sets helps bring out the mistakes that you might not have caught when under the pressure to adapt. Having that secondary pair of eyes will help you a lot in those scenarios to guide your improvement in a positive direction. The more familiarity you have with a character, the more likely you are able to improve your matchup refresh rate at a faster rate than your opponents, creating the building blocks to victory. Going forward, try to take a second to consider how quickly you are able to respond to what a matchup demands of you. Focus on the sole options that an opponent might be more likely to go for. These options are usually the damaging ones, and playing to not get hit by them is crucial. Honing your matchup refresh rate to remind yourself on how to fight some characters should be studied and improved upon to build stamina for longer tournaments. Hey, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. This is the first time I've really done something like this, and if you were able to make something out of it, then please drop a like and subscribe to the channel for more content. It only takes 2 seconds and it helps a ton. I've had ideas like these on a notepad on the back burner for a little while, and I want to give some knowledge to the larger Smash scene. I also stream on Twitch, so if you're looking for some good vibes, please check out my channel in the description below. I try to stream a few times a week of grinding while preparing for bigger tournaments. Thanks for your time. I hope I can discuss these topics a little bit more on this channel. Thanks.